Let's talk to an Aggie legend. He's been on the cover of Sports Illustrated. He was a 4-year starter here at A&M, rushed for 2,846 yards, led the Aggies in rushing his last 3 seasons before heading to the NFL. Our next guest, Bubba Bean. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great. And you?
I'm doing well. So when I saw you in the lobby earlier, I was like, this dude could still play.
Looks are deceiving.
Yeah, is that
Very
right?
deceiving. I'm still having trouble swinging a golf club, so no, football's not my thing now.
No, but we were talking at the break earlier that you still have that competitive fire, and you get it at the golf course.
Yes, playing with Mark Dennard and Phil Bennett, Mark in particular, very competitive. He was our center. He's 2 years behind me, so I play with him, and you know we don't cut each other any slack. It's full bore.
So what are you doing these days?
I actually work for the city of Bryan as a neighborhood youth outreach coordinator. I do a lot of work with the neighborhood associations and like Boys and Girls Club, helping them do some things as far as fundraising and things like that. I get a chance to play golf doing my job, which makes it even better.
It seems to me that football for you was a chapter in your life, but you are much more than a football player.
Very much so. I think, you know, from starting when I was 7th grade until you play up to 5 or 6 years in the NFL, that's a period of my life I'm very proud of. I'm grateful my kids had a chance to see me play, but that was a small bit of my life. I don't want to be judged based on that. So now I try to do things that are good for me, good for my family, and good for the people that I surround myself with.
So let's kind of go back, and we'll kind of catch up where we are now. How did you end up at A&M? Why did you pick A&M? How'd you get here?
Long story. R.C. Slocum started recruiting me, I think, when I was a sophomore.
Okay.
And R.C. was a guy that had gotten real close with my mom and dad. So once that happened and Coach Ballard moved here from UT, R.C. took the job here, and I was with him the day he accepted it. And all the things he was telling me about Kansas State, he turned around and said, well, you know, it gets awful cold up there. He knew I'd never been anywhere. So he said, let me tell you about A&M now. So that was how it started. And then from there, it was just Coach Ballard kind of closing the deal. And keep in mind, this was during a time when freshmen were available to play the first year. And
you were the first class to be able to do that?
First class,
yeah.
And when we came in, they were talking about running the wishbone, which was give you an option of 3 running backs in the backfield plus a quarterback, so there was a chance to play. And when we got here, I got moved up right away, so I didn't get a chance to play freshman ball, which was a 5-game season, if I remember. But it was great, got my feet wet, and then the next year it kind of took off with some of the other guys we started recruiting.
2-part question here. First off, I think Coach Slocum was, at least that first year, was doing offense, right? He was an offensive analyst or something to that effect, I believe.
He's 1972.
Okay.
He was, I think, a linebackers coach.
Oh, was he linebackers coach at that point? And then what is that relationship like? What does he mean to you?
Well, played golf with him last week.
Yeah.
Was happy to see that he's doing well with this cancer situation. But RC's always been close to my mom and dad. He would go by and visit even once I was already here. He didn't have any other reason to go back to Kirbyville. But has been a big part of my family over the years. I get to see him now from time to time. And like I said, we played golf last week for the first time, I think, in a long time.
So the Longhorns, I know, was very important to you to beat them. How important was it? Kind of take me through some of those battles.
Well, I guess we were part of a group that didn't have that so-called hatred for the opposing team only because they were Texas. We just wanted to win. We didn't care who it was. So it took a while for us to get enough people here to be competitive with Texas because they were light years away ahead of us at the time. But the next year after we came, we recruited guys like Lester Hayes and that crew. And so there was a group of guys that were going to go on and play at the next level, and we became competitive. Unfortunately, we never won a championship, but we were ranked number 2 our senior year. and they switched the schedule. We played Arkansas last instead of Texas. And we wind up beating Texas, but we go to Arkansas and lay an egg.
Oh, wow.
And we wind up getting beat in the bowl game. So we go 10-2 that year.
Remind me, was there a back and forth with you and Raymond Claiborne during one of the games, or you thought you scored? Everybody thought you scored, but they didn't call it. Am I right there?
You are exactly right. I'll go to my grave thinking that I did.
Yeah.
Ray and I have talked over the years. I don't see him that much now. I don't think he plays golf anymore, but yeah, I think I did because I don't think I ever touched the ground. I was laying on him when I rolled into the end zone. But we wound up scoring and beating them, 20-10.
Yeah, what a great journey there.
Yeah.
So I know that you don't follow football the way you used to, but Texas is going to be joining the SEC next year.
Mm-hmm.
From history standpoint, what does that mean? Getting that rivalry back.
I guess it would be different if it wasn't in the SEC.
Mm-hmm.
The SEC seems like every week somebody's a rival. If you don't beat one of the Mississippi schools, you're not going to go very far. Then you always have LSU there, and it's a tough road to hoe. I mean, and being in the middle of it, I can't imagine having to gear up like that week in and week out. And once again, until you beat somebody, you can call them a rival if you want to. Doesn't mean it's a rival.
Well, a rivalry really is, there's got to be a back and forth,
yes.
right? Because at least in your eyes it may be, but the other program, it's not.
Yeah, exactly.
We're talking to Bubba Bean here in studio, looking back at his history. What about your group of Aggies that you played with? I know you played golf with a couple of them. Like, how close of a group was it?
It was a lot different than it is now because when we first came, when I say we, there were 8 black athletes that signed that year. Out of the 8, 5 of us stayed. All 5 of us graduated, and all 5 of us played pro sports. So I think that was a kicking off point of getting not just an athlete, but a great athlete to come to A&M. We made it kind of the thing to do. The next year, the Lester Hayes, that group of guys showed up. And it just continued from there. Being able to play as a true freshman was a shock when you first get here. But my concept of it was, I'm joining a backfield. There's 3 other guys back here that have an opportunity to run the ball too. So when you get your chance, you better make the best of it because back then, days of running the ball 20, 25 times, just non-existent. Right. If you got 10 or 15 shots during a game, that was a big day.
It's interesting you say that because if you look at last year's football team, there were so many young players that were learning the game, and they weren't ready even as 5-stars. You lived it. You know what it's like to be the freshman who's got a lot of skill. You did well, but it was learning for you as well.
Mm-hmm. It is. I mean, the first time you have to step up in a line of scrimmage and take on a guy that's 6'4", 240, he's got a running start, and you're standing flat-footed, it'll test your spine there real quick. And it's different when you come out of high school because most of the time you're the best thing that school has. So it takes some adjustment, and it's not just one play. It's every play, it's every down, it's every game, it's every week. So it's a tough road to hoe.
When you're in high school and you're that level of player, you are the featured player, but you're playing against everybody's featured player at the college level.
Exactly. And it even becomes more intense when you get to the next level.
Let's go back to, I think, December 8th, 1975. I did some research. What do you remember about that cover of SI, how it all kind of came down?
Oh, man, didn't know it was going to happen. I got a cover, I got the cover. I'm not sure exactly when they called and said that they were going to do it. But to me, it wasn't that big of a deal. We were still in the hunt for a national championship. That's what my focus was on. This came to fruition, later on. But it's been good. I mean, it's not something I hang my hat on. That was a year of my life. That was, a great year of my life. But to me, it's more about what you do afterwards. Because like a surgeon, he doesn't go back and watch people operate all the time. He moves on to another stage in his life. So that's kind of where I am now.
Something tells me, if Instagram and Facebook were around back in your day, you probably wouldn't have been on it. That wasn't your thing.
Bubba Bean doesn't do it now.
Yeah.
I don't have any Instagram accounts. None of the social media stuff. I'll text my friends and receive an email.
Right.
That's the extent of what I do. It's just to me. I could care less what people think about what I'm doing, as long as I'm happy doing it. That's all that matters to me.
What do you remember about the draft, the NFL draft?
Ooh,
different day.
Yeah, sitting in my apartment across the street from the old Skaggs Albertson is where that was marriage student housing. Was married at the time, had my daughter was there, and I get a call from Atlanta saying that they're going to draft me, and I'm thinking, okay, never been to Atlanta, I don't even know where it is, basically. That was the extent of it. They call, and then once they selected me, they put me on a flight and took me to Atlanta. But it wasn't something it wasn't even something I was looking forward to. If it happened, it happened. If it didn't, I was going to do like everybody else that came to school at A&M, try to finish my degree and move on with life. It wasn't a make or break thing for me.
How was your time in Atlanta?
Difficult at times. I tore ACL my second year in shorts and shoulder pads, and basically struggled after that. Just could not, because during that time they really weren't repairing ACLs. They would go in and clean it up as best they could, and you just basically had to live with it.
It was like a career death sentence at that point, right?
Exactly. I worked out a lot with Fran Tarkenton, who lived in Atlanta. Used to be the quarterback of Minnesota. And several other guys that had had the surgery, and it was a matter of trying to strengthen the muscles around the knee so that it would compensate for not having that stability inside. Since then, of course, they've gone there, light years since then. I've had both knees replaced, both hips, got a plate in my neck, surgery on my hands. As long as I can get my grip around, you can see this one, it points in every direction.
Right.
When I say, hey, everybody looks. But it's difficult. I mean, if you play long enough, eventually you have to pay the piper. And people don't realize when you're, 20, 21 years old, that you are as vulnerable as the other guy. Now, I have friends of mine, Carl Roaches, who was my roommate. Carl played with Houston, didn't get drafted the year we came out, but wound up making All-Pro as a kick returner. Carl has never had a surgery, absolutely not one surgery. But I got guys like me and Mark Dennard. Mark went in and had his other knee done the week after I had mine, so we can compare stuff now. So it's a tough sport, and it will. Of course, it was played a little bit different when we played. Pretty much anything goes during that time. The clotheslines, the crackback blocks, all of that stuff was legal. So we didn't have the protection that they have now. Now, I think if you walk out of the tunnel and you get too close to the quarterback, you can get a flag thrown. Yeah. It's totally different now.
And concussions were kind of a badge of honor back in the day.
Rub some dirt on it and go back in there. Yeah. It was almost if you didn't get a concussion, or what we never called it a concussion. We called it getting your bell rung or getting dinged. If you hadn't had one, it was almost like you weren't playing hard enough.
Does the NFL now is such a business? It wasn't the way it is now then, but it was still a business. Did you feel the business aspect of it when you got there?
My second or third year, guys would tell me, man, this is actually exactly what you said. It's a business. It's all about this. It happens to be 52 guys that all work for the same company. And everybody is looking for somebody to slip so that someone else can come in. So and until you accept that, the rah-rah win one for the home team, that's just a byproduct of it.
What about this community? So you got here in the early 70s. It was a small town when I came to school here. It doesn't feel that way anymore. You've seen the growth. Just to take me through like what it was like then and to what you see now, this big city now.
Well, it's interesting because Mark and I were talking about that day before yesterday. When I came to school here, I think we had 17,000 students, and you could walk everywhere. I mean, you know, we parked on campus. We had a dorm there, which is still there. The old Henderson Hall building is still there, but and it only housed football players. This was during the time when that was still legal. So we walked pretty much everywhere. The only places to go, that little place down on the front of campus, that we could go in and play pool and listen to a jukebox. That was the extent of it.
Right.
Well, the next year or so, they had a place that opened down the street here, and they opened Sports Club, which was where the old Skaggs Albertson used to be. And those came in, I want to say, maybe our second and third year or so. And then, of course, it was gone after that. But it has changed. I live approximately 4 miles from the stadium here right now. And when I bought that place, you know, it was in the country.
Right.
Now there's 70,000 students here, and when they show up, it takes me 45 minutes to go through one light, seems like.
Right.
It's amazing how big the place has gotten in such a, I can't say a short period of time, because I came in 72.
Right.
You know, it's been 50 years, man. You know, everything has grown. Even Hearn has grown since then.
Sure, but I feel like the last 20 years, it's been like, it went from, so I'll tell you my perspective of it. I couldn't wait for this to be a bigger city as a kid. Now I miss the small town that it used to be. And you can appreciate having all the restaurants and the stores and all that. There's definitely a convenience factor, but there was a charm to the small town.
Well, I grew up in a small town, and when I go back now, which I don't do very much, you know, I miss that of being able to go places and go from point A to point B without having to reroute and go all the way around, you know, to hit Highway 6 just to get to here.
Right.
You know, so yeah, I miss the small town flavor of it, but you know, with progress comes things like this.
Have you met Jimbo?
No.
No. He's got a big year ahead of him, so hopefully Aggie football gets back on track, my friend.
Hopefully so.
Bubba, I appreciate you coming in. Pleasure to see you. As I mentioned, I know you've moved on to golf. Looks like you can still run the ball, all right?
I'll dislocate a shoulder putting on pads.
You'll probably dislocate our shoulders as you run through us. Thank you so much for making a few minutes.
Appreciate it.